I'm here to talk to you all today about time. Time is something that I think all of us probably feel that we do not have enough of. Would everybody agree with me that you probably have more things on your to-do list than you have time to do today? And that is usually a constant stress inducer for most of us in our daily lives. So there's been a lot of research lately around time, happiness, life experience. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of that research and ways in which you might be able to use your time better and ultimately live a happier life. So I did the BelkTalks inaugural event, I guess we would call it, back in July, and I talked about the science of happiness. And part of that talk was around how we value money versus how we value time. And essentially, a lot of the research has found that there's no secret that the United States has created this time famine, where each of us feel like we don't have enough time in the day to do all of the things that our life requires. Well, why, and what do we do about it? What they found is essentially the reason that we have a time famine is because we undervalue our own time because we overvalue money. When you think about that, there are some things that each of us can do to understand how do we value our own time. Because to be frank with you, as I started looking at some of this research and reading about it, I got asking myself, well, I don't know how I value my own time, and how am I creating these issues for myself because I don't know what is valuable to spend my time on versus what is not. So there's been some research that's been done to understand, okay, when people value their time more, what does that look like? What does that mean? Some of the research has found that when people spend money on time-saving activities, regardless of their socioeconomic status, everyone ultimately was happier because they spent money on something that they didn't want to do. That could be laundry, that could be walking your dog, whatever it is. They found ways in which they can spend a certain amount of money on an activity and they reap dividends in their happiness factor because they spent that $40 on getting the laundry done because they hate doing laundry. There are lots of things in our lives that we probably could do and outsource, but we first have to take an inventory of our own time to find what are those activities that I hate doing that lead to my unhappiness or stress in my life. So I give the example of doing the laundry because that's an easy one. But I think step one for all of you would be to look at how you spend your days. What do you do every day? How do you spend your time? What are the activities that you despise doing, but yet you still are doing them because they have to get done, but they are leading to you being unhappy or stressed because you know that you have to do those? So first would be for all of you to figure out how do I spend my time and what are some ways in which I might be able to spend some money on something that would benefit my own happiness because I don't have to do that activity or task any longer, and all it takes is spending $20 in a month or in a week. Because from that study, they also found it didn't matter how much money you spent on the activity, because I think that there was an assumption for a long time that only wealthy people could benefit from spending money on time-saving activities. But what they found is that you don't have to be wealthy in order to benefit from that. And also, you don't have to spend a lot of money to benefit from it. So figuring out what are those things that you might be able to outsource that would ultimately lead to your happiness is something that only you can answer for yourself, but it is something that we all should strive to understand because it will make all of our lives better, happier, and less stressed. I think one of the other things that as you think about time and as you inventory how you spend your time is understanding how do you respect your own time. And what I mean by that is figuring out ways in which where you're not spending time on things that are giving you any benefit, or you're doing them just because you have to. Really getting real with yourself and asking what is the requirement here? Why must I spend my time on this thing? And is it giving you a benefit, or are you gaining anything from spending your time on that? So I think we all have to be self-reflective first to understand how do we respect our own time, because the second piece of that is then being able to respect other people's time. Like we said, everybody is busy. Everybody has more meetings than they can go to. Everybody has to divvy things up. So we all owe it to one another as well as ourselves to be able to respect other people's time. And in order to do that, we need to understand what is it that I'm spending my time on, and how might I also help somebody spend their time wiser? There are only so many hours in a day, and we're all given the same amount of hours in a day. So I think that we all have to also understand that if something is important, then we have to prioritize it and give it the time that it deserves. How do you take back those hours in the day that are lost or wasted? And it really comes down to understanding where you're spending it. What are the things that you don't like doing? Because it's different for all of us. Only you can make the decision about what it is that you want to do with your time and change your habits around how you spend it. So one of the other things that they found when they were doing some of these studies was asking people, I think this was a Canadian study, and they said, I think to 100 different people on the street, if we were to give you $500, what would you spend it on this weekend? Only 2% of the people said that they would spend it on a time-saving activity. So I think that that's pretty telling about that even when people are given free money to spend however they wish, that they don't even realize that there are ways that they could spend that money better that would make them happier. So that's why I say I think it's on all of us to understand, well, where is it that I might spend that time, and what might I do differently with that time? Because even in the scenario of $500 for free, only 2% of people claim that they would even do anything with it that would benefit their overall happiness by giving themselves back more time to spend however they'd like. And so, and Matt mentioned too a couple of points in his talk that I want to expand upon, and I think that one of those is within leadership and your obituary, and at the end of this life, what is it that you're going to look back on and say on your deathbed? And there's been some research that's been done with hospice nurses and such, and overwhelmingly, everyone that they ask, what would you have done differently in your life? It all comes down to one thing. And they all say, I would have spent my time differently. Not, I would have spent more money on this. I would have spent more time at work. Everybody says, I would have done something different with my time, because ultimately, that is the only thing that any of us have. So I challenge all of you to get real with yourself and understand how might you make benefits in your own life by being real about how you spend your time and why you spend it that way, and finding ways in which you can spend your time better. And ultimately, at the end of all of this life, be able to say, I spent my time how I wanted to. Thank you.